Afternoon, adventurers. Coming at you with... I gotta stop saying coming at you for all these videos. Today we've got the H spells that changed in the 2024 Player's Handbook. Not a lot more to be said on the topic, so let's get right into it. Hail of Thorns, first and foremost, has changed in that it is now a prompted bonus action like the Smite family of spells when we hit a creature with a ranged weapon. As a result of that, the spell no longer requires concentration, which is great if we have something like Hunter's Mark, I guess, or any other concentration spells. Upcasting the spell is also no longer arbitrarily capped at 6d10. It used to be for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why personally, but that's no longer the case. If we want to cast this with a 7th, 8th, or 9th level spell slot, we get the appropriate damage now. Hallow is now Abjuration instead of Evocation, and its resistance and vulnerability effects no longer exclude bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Those are now valid choices for those effects. And all of the spell's effects now lack a saving throw, which is honestly huge, because Hallow does some very serious stuff. The spell has gained some infamy since the new book came out because the cleric feature Divine Intervention allows us to cast it as an action, and that's crazy, but that's a change to a class feature, not the spell. Harm no longer makes any mention of diseases, which is perfectly in line with the rest of the 2024 design philosophy. All mention of disease has been removed, and that includes this spell. On the other hand, the reduction to the target's maximum HP now lasts until the end of a long rest, because the spell doesn't specify otherwise. Haste has had a change that might seem small at first. Now the wave of lethargy that washes over the target when the spell ends imposes the incapacitated condition. It didn't do that before. It only prevented the target from taking actions. Now, having the incapacitated condition breaks concentration on spells, and it also ends certain class features. Haste didn't used to end those things before, so that is a bit of a debuff. Heal is now Abjuration instead of Evocation. It now works on constructs and undead, according to the spell. Constructs and undead may have their own individual features that make them immune to healing magic, but blanket general rule, this spell now affects those creature types, along with all the other creature types. This spell also doesn't make any mention of diseases anymore, but now it cures poison instead, so that's kind of a buff anyway. Similarly, Healing Word is also Abjuration instead of Evocation now, and does not exclude constructs and undead. Again, they might individually be immune to it, but c'est la vie. It also restores 2d4 plus spellcasting ability modifier HP now, and gains 2 more d4s with every spell slot level above first. That makes the spell nearly twice as good as it used to be. Crazy good. Heat Metal has been restricted a little bit in that the caster now has to be in range of the target in order to deal the fire damage with their bonus action on their turn. That didn't used to be the case, so people could cast the spell and peace out and then just hurt a person for a full minute. Now the caster can't do that, they have to stay in range. Or at least dip in and out of range. I don't know if this counts as a change, but Hellish Rebuke, the flames are now explicitly green for whatever reason. Instead of being described as hellish, they're described as green. I don't know. Hero's Feast now has a range of self with the food appearing nearby, instead of a range of 30 feet with the food appearing in that range, for whatever that's worth. Again, there's no mention of disease, which is perfectly normal in the 2024 version of this edition. And the spell only grants resistance to poison damage instead of immunity like it used to, though creatures are still immune to the poison condition. Heroism now doesn't specify that the temporary hit points it gives go away when the spell ends, so, as per the general rule, the creature benefiting now keeps them until the end of a long rest. Hex now lasts for 4 hours when cast at a 2nd level spell slot, sort of an intermediate scaling option there, for 3rd level warlocks I suppose. This spell also no longer specifies that Remove Curse ends its effect, probably because it was a little redundant to have that in both spells. That is what Remove Curse does. Hold Monster no longer specifies that undead aren't affected, although some undead may be immune to paralysis. It is no longer a blanket restriction making undead immune. This spell also no longer requires targets to be within 30 feet of each other when it is upcast. And that's the same for Hold Person as well. Targets no longer need to be within 30 feet of each other. Holy Aura now functions properly as an aura would, as an emanation that stays around the caster, that benefits them and their allies. Fiends and undead blinded by the spell now are only blinded until the end of their next turn, not until the spell ends, so a little bit of a debuff there. Hunger of Hadar, as I'm given to understand that's how it's pronounced, now benefits from outcasting by gaining 1d6 to either the cold or acid damage per spell level, up to the caster to choose. Hunter's Mark now deals force damage instead of sharing the weapon's damage type, and that is largely because it now applies to spell attacks. It didn't do before. Before it was limited to only weapon attacks, and now it is not, which means things like Scorching Ray and Hunter's Mark, if you have those, maybe you're multi-classed or something, can benefit from Hunter's Mark. And that is it for the H spells. That was all of them. I have no more words for you today. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for liking and subscribing. For those of you doing those things, YouTube loves it. And I will see you in the next one. The I spells. That's spells starting with I, not I spells. Whatever. You know what I mean. Happy adventuring.